to cannabis are just like addictions in my own life. I'm addicted to Morning Joe on TV. I love Mika and my liberalism. I'm addicted to shopping sometimes from my home and playing with my dog. I'm late for work, I play tug of war, negative consequences of my rotator. You know, those can be negative consequences. Myth number 10, if you legalize cannabis, it's going to be, the DUIs are going to be just as bad as they are from alcohol. Now hear me, no one's recommending anyone drive within a few hours of lighting up, or maybe a half day or a day of ingesting cannabis. But the impairment you get from cannabis isn't anything like the impairment you get from alcohol because of the neurological effects of the drugs. With alcohol, it decreases inhibitions and reasoning, making drivers speed and take chances. Cannabis, on the contrary, makes drivers a tad paranoid. Suddenly, every white car on the road is a cop car and you're slowing down. The stoner profile is true. You know, you're driving 5 miles an hour below the speed limit. You know, that's all I have for you. I just want to put things in perspective. No one's recommending people go out and smoke cannabis, but for heaven's sakes, when the penalty is worse than the drug itself, we've got a problem. Thank you, each of the panelists, for being a part of the discussion.
Okay, with that we'll move into Q&A. So if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and if you want to direct it at one of the panelists in particular, that's fine. But
I have a question for the doctor. How do you feel this effectiveness of CBD alone without the THC? Have you heard of some products like that?
Yeah, I would say probably one word. Sanjay Gupta pretty much answered that there's a synergistic effect of THC and the CBDs. There's over 100 CBDs, but it appears that most of them would be potentiated by some degree of THC, and it's not necessarily enough to get any buzz or any psychological effects. A 5-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC would not have any effects, but also have a potentiation effect. Sanjay Gupta calls it the entourage effect. There was an article in the Springfield News Leader about 2 months ago that voiced an opinion against CBD-only rules. We need to let the research take us where it leads. Right now, the research is saying that THC needs to be a part of that formula. Sadly, the law we passed here in Missouri doesn't go quite far enough, but it was a foot in the door.
But CBD products alone without THC are legal in the state, correct?
I understand that they are
Because
available.
I sell them out of my store, CBD only, and I was just questioning, because I feel a little bit less anxiety. I don't take any prescription medications, or I choose not to smoke cannabis because I am in a custody case. But I do like the CBD because I feel that it has reduced my anxiety and it helps me sleep at night. Do you feel that I just a placebo effect, or could that be true?
There are certainly plenty of sedating effects to many of the CBDs. There's no question about that.
Thanks for answering my
I just don't
questions.
know which of the 112 you may be vaporizing.
Whatever you can get.
all right, another question? We generally have a lot of
If
things.
it's probably just directly from the plant, it's probably just a bunch of them. It's probably everyone done probably.
Question over here.
Can you speak about the new law reform that happened a few months ago or 6 months ago, where they changed the laws?
Are you talking about the criminal code revision?
Yeah, the criminal code.
Okay, yeah. So the criminal code of the state of Missouri was just overhauled for the first time in about 50 years, and this is a huge revision of law. There's actually about, I think, maybe it was split into 2 different bills, and I think combined it was over 1,000 pages. So this is a behemoth of a piece of legislation we're talking about here. But one of the things that did is it changed the way that first-time cannabis offenses will be handled. And so it eliminated jail time as a possibility for first-time cannabis offenses for less than 10 grams. It was originally going to be less than 35 grams because that was the old standard in the law, but in the House there was a rather conservative House Judiciary Chair, Stanley Cox, this is his last term, but he pretty much insisted on a more stringent rule, and 10 grams was the compromise. But also, one other very good thing is that it also eliminated the prior and persistent drug offender statute. And that is, if you're familiar with the case of Jeff Mazansky, who is a guy who was serving life without parole 3 cannabis-only offenses. He is, he is a victim of that prior and persistent drug offender statute. Because basically, what that said is it's a similar thing to a 3 strikes and you're out kind of law, but specifically for drug offenders. And so since it was his 3rd offense, it didn't matter that the other offenses were still rather minor marijuana offenses, the penalty had to be applied without probation or parole as a possibility. And so that provision has been repealed. Now, the only downside to all this, we need to go a lot further, but these are steps in the right direction. However, the downside is that this doesn't go into effect until 2017, because that's one of the deals that Governor Nixon, I believe it was mainly the governor, had said, well, it's such a big bill, we don't know what's in it yet, even though they've taken literally 5 or 6 years working on this, that we're going to need some time to review it and so work out any possible kinks that there are in it. And so therefore, we're not going to have it go into effect when it would usually go into effect, which would be around now or even maybe the beginning of next year. Instead, it won't go into effect until January 2017, by which time we hope to have actually passed the legalization initiative. So hopefully it actually won't even make a difference, but still, step in the right direction. Yeah, in the back there.
Well, I was going to make a few points. If you want to get a lot of this information out or understood, I suggest Jack Herer's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. The history, who's behind it, who prohibited, what happened, and who's profiting. Very deep on the law enforcement view. In San Francisco, and I believe Dan Beeks up in Columbia made it the lowest priority. Well, it would be simple to put before the legislature that you don't want to be bothering Cheech and Chong when you've got Jack the Ripper out there, and obviously your point of time needs to be spent there. And that point alone might make a lot of difference in their minds. On the hemp issue, being 25,000 market competitive, commercially viable uses, that should sell a lot of business. I know ex-Senator Clemens out in Marshfield, and I've talked to him on this. And there where I've been studying law, working on another case to try to save liberty, the Federalist separates property from liberty. That would do something against any contracts one might fall into. And the preamble, being the objects of the Constitution.
Could you come to a question here in a second?
Sure.
All right.
And so what would you see on the best way to approach law enforcement for a change that some of them have such jaded views?
I'll hand that one off to Gary if I could.
I believe law enforcement is actually changing on that, and I think priorities is probably the main reason. Right now, the police have a financial interest in this, because when they seize that money, it now comes back, and that's how you buy these MRAPs, and you buy a lot of equipment. And I think if the money was cut off, that would kill a lot of the incentive out there to go overboard. I believe that departments still need narcotic units, but I don't think they need to chase the money. I mean, as long as it's still against the law, they have to enforce it. Once you start chasing that money, the game changes on your priorities.
Well, I'm aware the Supreme Court ruled that forfeiture was legal, but the Constitution still states that bills of attainders are unlawful. So that they might look at.
Well, here's how they get around. The state law says it will go to the revolving school fund. But what they do is they go to an agency like DEA, and DEA circumvents state law. And I believe state law is what we should follow here in Missouri, whether it's guns or anything else. I think I believe in states' authority. Some people call it states' rights. I believe that the proper term really is states' authority. So, but I think if we get rid of the incentive, I think it will stop.
Good point.
I think there's a question back over here. Yeah.
I have two, if you don't mind. The first one's for Gary, kind of on the subject that you were just on. Last year there were 756,000 arrests for possession of marijuana alone. Assuming that we get this passed, let's just hypothetically say on a national scale, what effects do you think that would have on the police department, their funding, and their other departments that are on, say, narcotic divisions of police departments?
Well, I think it works both ways. I mean, it will cut back on the funding, so taxpayers will have to pick up some of these expenses. But what most people don't know is that when the federal government kicks you back that 80%, the federal government puts a lot of rules on what they can spend that money on. So they can't spend it on the things that I would like them to spend on, like my salary and on my pension. But what they do is they buy what I call toys. So you buy MRAPs and you buy different equipment, a lot of it not needed. I know we got something in St. Louis called a shot spotter. And it triangulates it. It came, I think, from Iraq. They would, like when they would get shot in Iraq, they would triangulate and then they would like lob their mortars wherever that round came from. So we use it here in St. Louis. But if anything, you don't need a shot spotter because you hear the rounds, so you know it's going off. Now, you may not know exactly where it came from, but it really isn't of any benefit to us. It's just a waste of money. I mean, let's face it, if you're getting shot at, or you're shot, you're going to call in a short period of time. So, I mean, this is something that we don't need, and this is what we spend our money on. And I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. And the second question, doctor, I forgot, what was your name again?
Jill Mobley.